All right, hello, English 101. This is Mr. Price here with what I hope to be an informative online lesson. As I've mentioned in class, it's difficult to cover these cores in depth in class time because it would take roughly 40 to 45 minutes, and that's just not the kind of time that we can be giving to stuff like grammar. And so this supplemental lesson should hopefully help you with these cores. I will hand out this exact worksheet to you during class on Tuesday the 10th, but this resource is going to be here for you to use as kind of a tune-up on what these cores actually are. So for your analytical essay, you need to do cores 11 through 15, the titles of which are on the screen right now. And because some of them group together better than others, I'm going to be talking about them in three separate categories. The first one, I'm just going to talk about gerund phrases. Then I will go on to talk about the adverbial clause ones. So that'll include the core 12 and core 15. And then finally, we'll go and talk about noun clauses. So again, hopefully I'll be able to timestamp this for you guys so you can start with core 11, go to core 12 and 15 and 13 and 14 in your own time. And hopefully I'll keep this relatively brief while also being pretty thorough with what we're talking about here. Because we are dealing with a gerund phrase, we have to first understand what a gerund is. A gerund is a verb-based word that acts as a noun in a sentence. So a verb-based noun is any kind of action that you can do. You can sit, you can sing, you can throw. In this case, we're using the verb-based word sing, and in the sentence, Jason sings a song, it's acting as the verb there, sing. However, when we add an ing to a verb-based word, and we can use it as the noun, that's how we're going to create a gerund. So in this sentence, singing is Jason's favorite activity. The verb in our sentence is, and the main subject of our sentence is singing. Because subjects can only be nouns, and singing is being used as a noun here, it is a verb-based word that acts as a noun, and thus it is a gerund. Understanding that, we then move on to what a gerund phrase is. So a gerund is simply itself plus its objects and its modifiers. Objects and modifiers are kind of the words that follow a gerund that tell us more about what that gerund is. So in this example here, we have the verb-based word sprint. If we just want to use it as a verb, we can say Usain sprints for fun. Usain is our subject. What is he doing? Well, he's sprinting. In the second example here, we see it as a gerund. Sprinting is an excellent activity. What are we talking about? We're talking about sprinting. What is it? It is an excellent activity. That's not a gerund phrase. It is simply a gerund because we don't have any objects or modifiers. However, this next sentence here, sprinting at the Olympics demands great dedication. Because it is being used as a noun, sprinting, and has modifiers, in this case, the prepositional phrase at the Olympics, what we have here is not only a gerund, but a gerund phrase, and that's why I have it underlined as such. Sprinting at the Olympics is our gerund phrase. Since the gerund phrase is the part of the sentence doing the action, we're going to call it our subject. A subject is the thing that does the action, does the verb in a sentence. If we go back to this example here with Usain, we can say Usain sprints for fun. Who or what is doing the sprinting? That would be our subject, and that is Usain. A linking verb is a verb that operates kind of as an equal sign. So if you think in math, 3 plus 3 equals 6. If you have the number 6 and you have 3 twice, those are the same things. They operate as an equal sign. On either side, you can say this thing is also that thing. I have 4 examples here. Tito is weird. What do we learn about Tito? Well, we learn that he is equal to the modifying word weird. Tito is weird. Same thing for this one. Janessa was a soccer star. Janessa was what? She was a soccer star. Marvin and Brad are brothers. Again, our subject is Marvin and Brad. We put the equal sign there because they are brothers. And finally, they don't always have to be verbs that are the form of to be. So what I mean by that is verbs like be, is, are, was, were. Those are all forms of the verb to be. In this example here, Monique feels sad. The word feels is a linking verb because it's telling us that Monique is sad. So that's the tricky part of these linking verbs here. But just know that they do exactly what they say. They link the subject to what we're going to call here the subject complement. When we say that this is that, the first part of our equation is the subject. And the second part of that equation is the subject complement. And we say that because it complements our subject. So if we go down here to these two examples, Martin is studious. Martin is our subject, and on the opposite side of that equation, of that linking verb, is the word studious. Since it's complementing our subject Martin, studious is our subject complement. The same thing goes for this sentence here. The money is the ransom payment. Money is our subject, and on the opposite side of the linking verb, payment is our subject complement. Now, if we go back to our core here, our core says it is a gerund phrase, one used as a subject and one used as its predicate nominative. We've defined what a subject is, and right now we're going to define what a predicate nominative is. When the subject complement is a noun, we call it the predicate nominative. So if we go back to these two sentences here, Martin is studious. Even though studious is our subject complement, we wouldn't call it a predicate nominative because it's acting as an adjective in this sentence. However, in the example, the money is the ransom payment, we could call payment a predicate nominative because it is the subject complement and it is a noun. Now you might be able to see kind of where we're going with this. Since gerund phrases work as nouns, you can have a gerund phrase as your predicate nominative. These work best when your subject is a thing, not a person or a place. So these next two examples here, we're talking about things, and they're going to work a little bit better in creating sentences than persons or places. The example, his job is operating the laundromat. So again, we're using that connective verb, that linking verb. His job, what is his job? Well, it is operating the laundromat. Operating is our gerund. The laundromat is the object of that gerund, which gives us the entire gerund phrase, operating the laundromat. The same thing can be said with the second example here. The play was throwing the ball to Mickey. We're talking about a play like in sports. What was that play? Well, it was throwing the ball to Mickey. That is what was entailed in that play. The word throwing is our gerund. The ball is the object, and to Mickey is the indirect object of this gerund phrase. So, to complete the core, we have to put a gerund phrase on both sides of the linking verb. One is the subject and one as its predicate nominative. These work insanely well with similes. Similes, as we've learned in class, are these comparisons that use like or as, and as we'll see in the third one, it works super well. The first example, watching birds is enjoying the woods. If we wanted to look at this sentence kind of like a math equation, it's just an equals statement. What is watching birds? Well, it means enjoying the woods. A way that you can make sure that you're doing this core correctly is if you could flip the sentence and having it make sense. Enjoying the woods is watching birds. Since we're saying that those two things are equal to each other, we can flip it and still have it make sense. The second example, singing a song is delighting in the splendor of music. Again, another kind of equation, if you will. We're saying that one thing, singing a song, is equal to the other thing, delighting in the splendor of music. Here's the simile here. Eating food is like filling an engine. We're comparing two things. In all of these sentences that use the linking verbs, we're comparing things. In this case, it's a little abstract, but again, it's perfect for gerund phrase and it's perfect for this core because we're comparing eating food to filling an engine. The really difficult part of this core is making sure that you don't have a compound verb instead of a gerund. So let's take a look at this example. Eating too much pizza is ruining my diet. In that sentence, is ruining is the verb and not a gerund phrase. Again, thinking about our equation here, what you want to do to make sure that you have two gerund phrases, one is the subject and one is the predicate nominative, is flip them and see if that equation still makes sense on both sides. If we go back to this sentence, ruining my diet is eating too much pizza. In this sentence, it doesn't really operate as a full thought, and because we can't flip it over the linking verb, we're going to say that that is not an example of core 11. The highlighted sentences in this paper are good examples of each core. In this case, these three highlighted areas are going to be the best examples for core 11. Cores 12 and 15 work with adverbial clauses, specifically introductory adverbial clauses. To start off, let's just focus on both of these words that make up the phrase adverbial clause. We'll start with adverbial. If something is adverbial, it is acting as or like an adverb. Well, what is an adverb? An adverb is a modifying word that gives more information about verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. Adjectives are what we use to modify nouns. The pretty girl, the red ball. Pretty and red are adjectives that tell us more about the noun. Adverbs are the words that modify the other parts of speech, the verbs, the adjectives, and oddly enough, other adverbs. Ezekiel quickly crumbled the paper. The word quickly is modifying the verb crumbled. It's telling us how Ezekiel crumbled the paper. The girl with the short brunette hair looked extremely beautiful. In this case, the underlined adverb extremely is telling us more about the word beautiful. It's telling us to what degree or how much is that adjective. It's extremely beautiful. In this third example here, because we have an adverb modifying another adverb, we have two. Mariah sang very loudly. The adverb loudly modifies the verb sang, tells us more about how Mariah sang. But the adverb very tells us more about the adverb loudly. It tells us how much Mariah sang loudly. Those are all three examples of how an adverb modifies the three different parts of speech it can. And a really good way to notify and to know if you're using an adverb is to look at these question words. Adverbs often answer the question how, when, where, how much, or why. Specifically, the three ones, how, when, and why, are used a lot of the time in adverbial clauses. Adverbial clauses are going to answer the same questions that adverbs do. Now that we've talked about the word adverbial, let's talk about the word clause. A clause is a very simple thing. It's any word that includes a subject and a predicate, or a subject and a verb. And every single clause we have can fit into two categories. A clause can either be independent or it could be dependent. We're going to be dealing with dependent clauses, but first let's understand what an independent clause is to help us understand dependent clauses. An independent clause is a clause that expresses a complete thought. Essentially what it means is it can stand by itself as a sentence. So these three examples, Jeremy shot the rabbit, Leroy considered taking geometry class, and Steven continued to play golf, they all include a noun and a verb and express a complete thought. They don't need any other words to be sentences by themselves. Dependent clauses are the exact opposite. They are a clause that does not express a complete thought and thus cannot stand by itself as a sentence. When Alvin spit into the cup. While it has a noun and a verb, Alvin and spit, it's not expressing a complete thought. It's telling you kind of when something happens. The second example, because Jamie folded the papers incorrectly. Again, we have a noun, Jamie, and we have a verb, folded, but we're not expressing a complete thought there. That's kind of a reason why something happened. You're looking for the other part of the sentence to tell you what actually happened because Jamie folded the papers incorrectly. All adverbial clauses are dependent clauses. Every single adverbial clause you will ever see cannot stand by itself as a sentence. And thus, if we take the two words adverbial and clause and put them together, we get this definition. An adverbial clause is a dependent clause that gives more information on the verbs, adjectives, and or adverbs in a sentence. Essentially, it's a dependent clause that works like an adverb. There is another kind of tricky word on both cores 12 and 15 that we have to add to clarify these adverbial clauses. We have to make them introductory. Very simply, an introductory adverbial clause, as we see in both cores 12 and 15, must begin the sentence. Just as an introduction would begin an essay, so too does an introductory adverbial clause have to begin the sentence. That's all it is for core 12. Very simple. You just need an introductory adverbial clause, and these next three examples are all iterations or examples of core 12. Because Malcolm ate too much pizza, he felt sick. I have underlined, because Malcolm ate too much pizza. That by itself does not express a full idea, but when added to the phrase he felt sick, works in the sentence as an adverbial clause. It's telling us why Malcolm felt sick, because he ate too much pizza, and we can say that it's introductory because it's at the very beginning of the sentence. The next two examples follow this order just like the first one does. Before Mario destroyed his PlayStation, he saved all the data. That tells us when he saved all the data. When did he save it? Before Mario destroyed his PlayStation. The third example, even though Laura passed her final test, she still failed the class. Why did she still fail the class, even though she passed her final test? Those three examples all work for core 12, but core 15 demands what's called a compound predicate. The word compound there is simply expressing that we need at least two verbs inside of the introductory adverbial clause to make it core 15, an introductory adverbial clause with a compound predicate. So let's talk about what I mean by that. When Gwen brushed her teeth and combed her hair, she heard a knock at the door. I've underlined the introductory adverbial clause, when Gwen brushed her teeth and combed her hair. If we're looking and asking ourselves, well, what is the subject or what is the noun in our adverbial clause? We're talking about Gwen. Instead of doing one thing, however, like Laura passing her test or Mario destroying his PlayStation, in core 15, you need to have the adverbial clause subject do two things. In this case, Gwen both brushed and combed her hair. The same can be said for the second example. Because Owen slammed his door and said curse words, his mother grounded Owen. In this case, the adverbial clause is answering the question why. Why did the mother ground Owen? Because he slammed his door and said curse words. This fits best with core 15 because we have one subject in the adverbial clause, Owen, doing two actions, two predicates. He slammed and he said. It's the same thing here in the very final one. Despite Benny buying her flowers and making a card, Daphne would still not forgive him. Why would Daphne still not forgive him? Well, despite Benny buying her flowers and making a card. Benny is the noun in our adverbial clause here, and he's doing two things. He's buying and he's making. That's how we get Core 15 introductory adverbial clause with a compound predicate. Finally here, we have cores 13 and 14. Now, luckily for us, cores 13 and 14 use a lot of the tools we've already gone over in cores 11, 12, and 15. But there is one that we need to reintroduce from previous cores done before. Noun clause. A noun clause is a dependent clause, which means it can't stand by itself as its own sentence, that functions as a noun in a sentence. Oftentimes, these noun clauses begins with the word that, how, or any of the why or the what words, who, what, when, where, why. Let's take a look at the sentences that follow. I cannot tell what the problem is. The subject of this sentence is I, the verb is tell, the direct object of this sentence is the entire clause, what the problem is. Make sure you have a noun clause by looking at the words and making sure that you have a noun and a verb in there. In the noun clause, what the problem is, we have a noun, problem, and we have a verb, is. Similar structure for the second example. Belinda forgot who Jason's parents were. Belinda is our subject, forgot is our verb. What did Belinda forget? Who Jason's parents were. And we can assure that this is a noun clause because we have the noun parents and the verb were. In this third example here, we have the noun clause being used as the subject of the sentence. When they call your name at graduation is a spectacular moment. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the moment when they call your name at graduation. That's your subject. Inside the noun clause, we can tell it's a clause because of the noun they and the verb call. Core 14 is a little simpler than Core 13 because it's asking you to use this noun clause as a pretty familiar part of your vocabulary. In this case, the predicate nominative, which we discussed all the way back in Core 11. Again, the predicate nominative is a subject complement that is a noun. A subject complement is the second part of the linking verb equation. So if we go down here and take a peek, Trinidad and Tobago, that's one country, is where my father was born. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the country, Trinidad and Tobago. Our linking verb is there. That's how we get our predicate nominative. And our predicate nominative is the noun clause, where my father was born. We have a noun in there, father, and we have our verb, was born. We have the word where beginning the noun clause. That is a predicate nominative noun clause, Core 14. Two other examples of Core 14. My favorite part of the movie is when the actors kiss. Subject is part, linking verb is, and predicate nominative is the noun clause when the actors kiss. And finally, the biggest question is, why do we not see any other life in the universe? That's a longer noun clause, but still works in this case as the predicate nominative. Biggest question is on one side of the equation, and why do we not see any other life in the universe is on the opposite side, making it the predicate nominative. Now, finally, Core 13 is a little difficult because we have to talk about what an appositive is. An appositive is a noun or noun clause that identifies, renames, or enhances a noun in the sentence. So what we're going to do for Core 13 is we have to have a noun clause, and it has to act as an appositive. In my opinion, this is easily the hardest core that we're dealing with this time around because it's really easy to make that noun clause an adjective clause. An adjective clause is exactly what it sounds like. It's a clause that operates as an adjective in a sentence. The best way to ensure that you get this core correct is to maybe cheat a little. This core works best when you use an abstract noun, i.e. a noun that is intangible, that you cannot touch. If you want to talk about an emotion, a feeling, a lesson, an idea, stuff like that works really well when making these appositive noun clauses. For Core 13 specifically, you have to give an appositive for the direct object. So let's just take a look at this sentence here before we get to our noun clause and identify what our direct object is. Michael heard the rumor. Our subject is Michael. He's doing something. He's hearing. What is he hearing? He's hearing a rumor. Rumor in this case would be our direct object because it's what is being done by our subject and verb. Michael's hearing something. He's hearing what? The direct object, rumor. In this case, the appositive that we add to this direct object is that Seth gave Lena a wedding ring. This tells us more information, identifies the direct object in the sentence. It kind of tells you, in this case, what the rumor is. Michael heard the rumor that Seth gave Linda a wedding ring. That noun phrase, that Seth gave Lena a wedding ring, is the appositive noun clause. That is what you're looking for in Core 13. The second one, Ian learned the lesson. Ian is our subject. He's learning something. What is he learning? He's learning a lesson. And again, note that the word lesson, the word rumor, and in the next one, the word fact, are all abstract nouns. You can't actually touch those nouns, but they are ideas. In the full sentence, Ian learned the lesson that he cannot skip class and still get an A. In this case, the appositive, again, renames or kind of tells us what the lesson was. Ian can't skip class and still get an A. It is the appositive because it renames our direct object. It is a noun clause because we have a noun, he, and we have a verb, skip and get. Finally, we have the sentence, Pedro hated the fact that Ariana was taller than him. We're talking about our subject, Pedro. Pedro hates what? He hates the fact. What is that fact? Well, the fact is that Ariana was taller than him. Again, it's an appositive because it renames or tells us what that fact is. It's a noun clause because it's operating as an appositive, and it's a clause because we have a noun, Ariana, and a verb, was. Another really useful tool for Core 13 is when you're starting your noun clause, use the word that. It's a really helpful and quick way to get a noun clause appositive. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, I'm going to give you this worksheet a week in advance of when your final essay is due. I would say these are probably our hardest cores that we've gone over so far, so I wanted to give you guys some supplemental direct instruction just in case you could utilize it. I hope you guys are doing well in your essays and can refer to this video if you need any more help. And again, if you do need more help, please come see me in my office or email me. I appreciate it, and have a nice day.